listening to the Life Edit Project podcast, where busy, ambitious high achievers get the tools they need to fight overwhelm and overthinking with balance, self-mastery, and a positive mindset. I'm your host, Elizabeth Burrows. I'm serving up bite-sized truth bombs in a judgment-free zone based on my perspective as a life coach, wife, mom, and recovering overachiever. We keep it real over here, which usually means some combination of insightful, entertaining, and a hot mess express. So, if you're looking for perfection, look elsewhere. But if you're still with me, let's dig into this week's episode. Good day, good people. Welcome back to the Life Edit Project podcast. We are getting so close to the end of season 1, but I've still got a couple of juicy episodes up my sleeves for the next couple of weeks. And I've got some fun things planned for what I've decided to call the post-season. So I don't know if that's a real thing in the podcast world, but it's going to be a real thing over here on this podcast because this is my show and I can do what I want over here. Ha! And all I really want to do, to be clear, is give you all things that you want to listen to and things that will add value to your life. And those things that I want to share with you include my thoughts and my coaching concepts. So that's what I'm going to continue doing over here on this show, even during the post season. So I've got a great topic for you today that I think you'll enjoy, and I'll have another one for you next week. But then you all, my lovely listeners, will tell me what to talk about for episode 20 because I will actually be responding to your questions. That's right. It's another Ask Me Anything episode for episode 20. So be sure to get your questions in by Sunday, October 1st, if you want to have them considered. So remember, here are the rules. Nothing is off limits. You can ask me anything you want. That's why it's called Ask Me Anything. You can also submit as many questions as you like because I'm not keeping track. And you get to choose if you want to stay anonymous. So if you want to leave your name, you can. If you just want to say anonymous listener, that's cool too. We had some really good and juicy questions come in for the last Ask Me Anything episode back on episode 10. So if you haven't heard that one, make sure you rewind and give that one a listen. And I'm already starting to get juicy questions in for episode 20. So don't miss your chance. If you didn't make it into the last time, submit a question this go round. You will find the link to the submission form in the show notes. It's a quick form. It takes like 2 minutes to fill out because I like to make things easy for you. Y'all know that. So that's looking ahead, but changing gears a little bit, it's time for me to give a shout out to my listener bae of the week. So in case you forgot or in case you're new around here, you should know, of course, that I love and appreciate all of my listeners. But the ones who take the time to leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, those listeners are my baes. And I will always take the time to acknowledge and thank them for taking that extra step to offer me feedback. So today's listener bae of the week has the username Burhinda, which I think is kind of cool. And they left a 5-star review titled Truth Bombs with an exclamation point. Here's what it says. I love the centering of authenticity and honesty. I love this perspective and lens. Thanks, Burhinda, for that review. I'm glad you're enjoying the show, and I appreciate your support. To the rest of you lovely listeners, you can get in on this too. You can be my bae if you want to. Just leave a 5-star rating and review over on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't know how to do that, I've got step-by-step instructions on my website at lifeeditproject.com/podcast. And of course, that link will be in the show notes for you as well. So now that we've got the housekeeping out of the way, let's take a dive into the deep end of this episode, shall we? Have a confession. I used to be a real busybody. And if I'm going to keep it real, which I try to do over here, I have to admit, that there are times where I can still display some of my busybody tendencies when I'm not being mindful and intentional of how I spend my time and attention. So I guess it's more accurate to say that I'm actually a recovering busybody. But I will say I'm more recovered than not, so that's something to celebrate. So in a moment, I'll tell you a few of the specific things that I used to do as a busybody, and then I'll tell you what I try to do now instead. But before I go there, I want to give you just a little bit of context for this confession that I'm making. So in a nutshell, up until a few years ago, I had been a busybody for all of my conceivable life, and I literally did not know how to not be busy. And I think that there are a bunch of reasons why that was the case. So looking back, I think I was conditioned to have a busy life, and it was reinforced in a lot of different areas of my life. I got the message that being busy was something that I should aspire to, that being busy was honorable and good, and that not being busy was bad or wrong. So some of these messages that I got were explicit, right? Where someone would literally say something to me that made me think and believe that it was better to be busy. But many of the other messages that I received were more implied. But overall, what I learned, what I absorbed really, was the idea that being busy was evidence that I was being a quote unquote good girl, right? Being busy was how I could demonstrate that I was smart, capable, and dedicated. And ultimately, I came to believe that the more busy I was, the more valuable I was to others around me. So I was also conditioned to believe that the opposite of this was true as well. If I'm not busy enough, then I was creating opportunity for trouble in my life. If I weren't busy enough, it meant that I wasn't trying hard enough and I would be overlooked or I would go unnoticed. And if I wasn't busy, it was because I was undesirable and no one wanted anything from me and no one wanted to spend time with me. So if these were the things that I was walking around believing about what it meant to be busy or not busy, then it's really no wonder that I became a busybody. Even if life wasn't busy, I had to essentially manufacture busyness so that I could feel good, capable, and valued. And I think that's what a lot of us busybodies and recovering busybodies do. We manufacture busyness. But we have to be careful because busyness is a trap that we fall into, and it becomes this never-ending cycle. So we get busy or we make ourselves busy, and that makes us feel valued and important, and we crave that kind of feeling. So then if we're like, hey, if a little bit busy makes us feel this good, we ratchet up the intensity, right? And we manufacture more busyness for ourselves because if a little busy is good, then a lot of busy must be better. But then we get overwhelmed and then ultimately dissatisfied. And we get so busy that we can't sustain that level of activity. So then we pull back and maybe we start to feel a little bit better. But then we start missing and craving the rush that we used to get from being busy. And so the cycle starts over. And that's really exactly what it looked like and how it went for me for years and years. And in different ways at different times, because I was a different kind of busy as a high school student than I was as a grad student. And I was a different kind of busy as a single woman in my 20s than I was as a married woman with a baby in my early 30s. But no matter how you slice it, and no matter what point of life you look at for me, your girl used to stay busy doing something until I finally decided that I didn't want to be on the hamster wheel anymore. I needed something different. So I'm going to share with you the 3 main things that I used to do as a busybody that kept me stuck in that cycle of busyness. And then I'm going to share with you what I do differently now and why it works better for me. So as I go through these 3 things, I want you to keep track of how many of these resonate with you, because you might be an undercover or in denial busybody. Okay, so the first thing I used to do as a busybody was let other people volunteer me to do all the things. And this used to happen all the time in a lot of different ways. I used to let people volunteer me to serve on committees, and I used to let people volunteer me to hold positions in organizations that I didn't care about. People at my job would volunteer me to work nighttime and weekend events that nobody else wanted to work, P.S. for no extra money, right? Oh my God, y'all. I remember this one time I found myself voluntold, that's what we call it when someone volunteers you for something that you don't want to do. I found myself voluntold to wear the most ridiculous yellow marshmallow peep costume at an event that was around like the Easter holiday for my job. And it was one of the most humiliating things that I've ever experienced. And y'all, I do not embarrass easily. It's hard to embarrass me. But I cringe every time I think back about to this story, because not only was it humiliating, but it was also just completely unnecessary. It was somebody else's idea for me to do this. And looking back, I can remember what I felt like. And I can remember how much I didn't want to do it. But I also remember feeling like I didn't have the ability to opt out. And that's just one example of something that I remember happening that I ended up doing that was somebody else's idea that I didn't like, didn't care about, and that was totally unnecessary. But those kinds of moments, they add up over time. So now there are a lot of reasons why being voluntold to do things all the time is not the bag. It's not what you want to do with your life. And one obvious problem is simply that when other people volunteer you to do things, those people are deciding what you focus on. So now, if you're the kind of person that doesn't care about anything in particular and you don't have any goals of your own, then this is probably not a big deal for you. But since you're listening to this podcast, I don't think that describes you. I'm pretty sure you have lots of goals and dreams and passions, and you really like the idea of being able to live a life that aligns with your personal priorities. And doing what other people want you to do all the time is not the ticket. When you fill up your schedule and your life with other people's priorities, there's no room left for your own. And that can lead to all kinds of frustration, resentment, and yes, even burnout, because it's exhausting to live a life that doesn't belong to you. As a recovering busybody myself, I don't get voluntold to do things anymore. Not because people don't try. Listen to me. People will always have opinions and suggestions for what you should be doing and how you should be using your time and what you should be working on. But it is still always up to you to make the final decision. So these days, I proactively decide what I commit to and what I want to commit to. And so when things come up, I'm able to either step up because I'm clear that it's in line with what I want and it's my decision, or I decline because I'm clear that it's not for me. Being clear on what I want and what is within my power to decide is the biggest shield I have to guard against the people who would otherwise overcommit me to things that I don't have time for, to things that I don't care about, and to things that don't serve me. The second thing I used to do all the time as a busybody was show up everywhere. My gosh, I think back to what my life was like 10 years ago, and I just cringe at how ridiculous it was. I had this thing that I used to say all the time. I can be in 2 places at once, but I can't be in 3. And it's the most ridiculous thing to say. But I used to say it all the time, almost like a mantra of sorts, because I was infamous for double booking myself. Now, it was often done unintentionally, but there were also plenty of times that I can remember choosing to try to do 2 things at once and to try to be in 2 different places at once. And I would just decide I'm going to say yes to both, and I'm going to figure out how to show up for everything. It was ridiculous. 0 out of 10, I do not recommend. So by default, I would accept almost every invitation or meeting request that came my way. And this is both in my personal life and in my professional life. So you want to invite me to coffee when I'm supposed to be working on a project? Sure, I'm there. You invite me to a networking event while I'm supposed to be at choir rehearsal? No problem. I'm there. Drop by my office with no notice because you happen to be in the neighborhood? Pull up a chair and stay as long as you like. I'll make it work. You see, one of the things about being a busybody is that you've got to keep up a certain level of activity to maintain the momentum. And what I realize now that I'm on the other side of this is that part of the reason I kept getting invited everywhere was because I was always showing up everywhere. In a sense, I taught people not to care about my time and not to value my time by showing them that they didn't need to. Now, as a recovering busybody, I do things very differently. Because activity for the sake of activity and visibility is no longer the goal. So I'm more strategic about where I spend my time and where I'll show up. Because no, not everybody can have a piece of me. No, not everybody deserves access to me. And no, I am not available for just any old thing. So instead of showing up everywhere for everything all the time, these days, I only show up in 3 kinds of places. If you're taking notes, write this down. I show up where I'm needed, where I'm valued, and where I'm fed. And ideally, the places where I show up will meet at least 2 of these 3 criteria. But you can guarantee that if none of these criteria are met, please don't look for me because I'm not coming. Hey there, it's Coach Elizabeth here. I hope you're enjoying the show and getting real value from it. I make it a point to give you actionable tips that you can use in real life in every episode. But sometimes what you need is more support, more accountability, and more personalized insights to get the results you want. That's where my one-on-one coaching services come in. As your life coach, I'll support you every week with live coaching sessions, practical tools, and proven frameworks that will help you reach your personal goals without sacrificing professional success. If you're ready to take the concepts I talk about here to the next level, book a free call with me to find out if my one-on-one coaching services are right for you. The link is in the show notes, and I can't wait to get started. Okay, back to the show. The third thing I used to do as a busybody was go the extra mile on everything. And to all my fellow overachievers, y'all know what I'm talking about. Your kid asks to have their friends over for a play date, and all of a sudden you're designing professional looking invitations and making personalized goodie bags, right? Yeah. And I get it. I'm not judging you. But I do want you to be aware of this tendency because if it's showing up in your life, you might be a busybody too. Also, I want to take a moment to just acknowledge something. The thing about busyness is that it ties your value as a person to how much you do, to how much action you take, not what results you get, or even the quality of the actions you take. And so, by extension, performative tasks become the currency of busybodies. It's better to be busy in a way that other people can see than to be busy in private. And one of the best ways to show people that you've been busy is to do things that you and only you can get credit for doing. And this is where that tendency to go the extra mile comes in. Now, if you also happen to be a perfectionist, it's even worse. But for perfectionists, going the extra mile is about making things more perfect. For busybodies, going the extra mile is about doing more things than other people to both have a reason to be busier than other people and to demonstrate that you are busier and therefore more valuable than other people. Now, I've said it already, but I'll say it again. Being a busybody is exhausting. It's exhausting to live this way when the reason you go the extra mile is to convince yourself and others that you matter, to try to earn the respect and admiration and affection of others by doing things for them. And the truth is, you have inherent value as a human being, regardless of what you do. And you are worthy of love and respect and affection without having to earn it by doing more than what is expected and required of you. So these days, as a recovering busybody, I'm not out here performing the most impressive and the most unexpected busy work so that I can get credit for being awesome. These days, I remind myself that doing what's required of me is sufficient. I remind myself that good enough is good enough, and I don't owe anybody anything extra. And that's not to say that I don't operate from a spirit of excellence, right? So some of y'all are listening to this and I know it, I can sense it. You are feeling resistance to this idea of not going the extra mile because doing just enough sounds real basic and it sounds underwhelming to you. But that's not what I'm saying. When I say that I'm no longer going the extra mile by default, it doesn't mean I don't care about the quality of my work. And it doesn't mean I never exceed expectations. It just means that when I do more than what's required, it's out of a sincere desire to do so, not out of obligation. And it means that I freely allow myself to do more and to go above and beyond what's expected when it's easy for me, when I have overflow to spare. But I don't require myself to do more than enough when it means that I will have not enough left over for myself to be okay. So those are the three things that I've changed, really three mindset shifts that I've made as a recovering busybody. And I hope those three things are enlightening and helpful to you today. And look, just so we're clear, some people might still look at my life and my schedule today and interpret it as me being busy. But I like to frame it differently. My life is full. And I want to live a full life, so long as it's full of commitments and activities that reflect what I care about, who I want to be, and the legacy that I want to leave behind when I'm gone. And that's what I aspire to each and every day. All right, y'all. I'm going to go rest a little bit. I don't know if you noticed in my voice, but I've got a little cold. The sniffles that my daughter had on last week's episode. Yeah, it's my turn. I got them now. So I'm going to go rest a little bit and not be busy so that this cold doesn't get the best of me. But I will be back in your ears next week with another juicy episode. In the meantime, go live a full life and not a busy one. Peace. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Life Edit Project podcast. I'd love to hear what your favorite moment or key takeaway was from this conversation. You can send me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter to let me know. My handle is @LifeEditProject, all one word, in all the places. My social media is linked up in the show notes to make it easy for you. Holla at your girl. I'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, don't just stay busy with the life you have. Get busy creating the life you want.